I love going back to old, historically important games and playing them to see how a series or even a genre evolved. First-person shooters, or FPSs, are one of the most popular genres of games today, and there are countless games in the genre spanning decades, all of them asking for portions of your hard-earned money and your precious time. But you might be wondering, how far back should we really be looking? Playing a first-person shooter from 1993 when some people still considered a computer mouse to be an optional accessory? Is it worth it? Halloween, and one of our viewers, inspired me to take a look at Doom, one of the granddaddies of the FPS genre. Not Doom Eternal, not 2016's Doom, but the original 1993 release of Doom, or at least the various re-releases of it. And I'll be using these 5 categories to help you decide if Doom is worth playing today. As always, I'm Chris, this is Babu's Game Room, and thanks for joining me for Is the Original Doom Worth Playing Today? In the early 90s, John Carmack, John Romero, and Tom Hall worked together on a game subscription service called Gamer's Edge, a subsidiary of the now-defunct SoftDisk. They produced some noteworthy games, but the most important one was their recreation of Super Mario Bros. 3 after Carmack's innovation in getting rapid side-scrolling graphics on the PC. Realizing how awesome of a team they made, they formed id Software and brought their recreation to Nintendo, who, being exactly the same 30 years ago as they are now, rejected them saying, "Mario stays on Nintendo consoles." Nonetheless, id Software was headhunted by Apogee Software, who were known for their shareware model for distributing games. Basically, instead of paying tons of money for publishing, advertising, and trying to get shelf space, a portion of the game, usually about a full third of it, would be distributed for free. Wow, I love free. Discs would be given out with magazines, and people were encouraged to copy them, upload them for others to download over the net, or just pass them along to friends. Companies like Apogee Software made money by selling the rest of the game at a reasonable cost. It worked out great. Gamers could try out a game for free, and they would be acting as the advertisers when they passed along the free portion of the game. This worked out well for id Software's first major release, Commander Keen, and they used the same method for their next game, Wolfenstein 3D. But Wolfenstein 3D was special. It was likely because it was a very adult game. No, not that kind of adult game. It was fast and action-packed, while also requiring strategy and thought to find the hidden secrets. But most importantly, it was violent. Even before console gamers, and their parents, were bickering about blood and fatalities in Mortal Kombat, PC gamers could run around shooting human Nazis and even dogs, who all left bloodied corpses scattered throughout the levels as the player progressed. Somebody get PETA on the line. And the game made Apogee Software and id Software a ton of money. So in planning their next game, they probably went, "So, gamers want an action-packed, violent FPS, eh?" I remember seeing a friend's dad playing Doom back in the mid-90s. I wasn't allowed to try or watch, but I remember seeing and hearing the monsters, the guns, the dark and gritty yet awesome music. But frankly, the game looked too scary for young me. If PC gaming had been as widespread in North America as console gaming was back then, Doom probably would have been involved in more controversies. It features demonic imagery, which really doesn't sit well with some populations in the US. There is extreme graphic violence, for the time, including blood splatters and realistic, for the time, gunplay. There were even multiplayer modes where players could kill each other, fellow humans! And let's not get into the horror that would be using a chainsaw to defend oneself. Of course, all of that was what made Doom so great, and a lot of adult gamers enjoyed having a video game that matched the violence and horror that society was perfectly fine with showing on film and TV. And being primarily on the PC probably saved it from being the subject of too many controversies, unlike console games, until 1999, almost 6 years after its initial release, when misguided relatives and overzealous lawyers tried to blame the game for inspiring or even allowing practice simulations of the Columbine school shooting. But you guys don't need me to tell you that those accusations were always rooted in bullshit. But well before that controversy, the game had already produced a sequel in Doom 2, as well as expansion packs and a release of the source code in 1997. But Even the biggest brunt of the controversy didn't deter the devs, and Doom 3 came out in 2004. And then there was the Doom film the following year, which, being a video game film, probably sucked.
I just looked it up, and it has a 19% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, there you go. There were all kinds of other media like comics, spin-off games, and plenty of spiritual successors. Years later, they did a series reboot with Doom in 2016, following it up with Doom Eternal in 2020. But gamers never forgot the original Doom. In fact, first-person shooters were often referred to as Doom clones for most of the 90s. Ports existed for almost every 16 and 32-bit console, with official ports even coming out in the 2000s on the Game Boy Advance and 360. People were playing deathmatches, creating custom mods and level packs, and porting Doom to every console and OS they could, including re-porting Doom to consoles that already had ports when savvy fan hackers believed they could do better. And they were right. Long before Skyrim or Grand Theft Auto 5, the meme was, can it run Doom? With people getting the game to run legitimately on wacky devices like graphing calculators, smartwatches, and even pregnancy tests. The original Doom never seemed to leave fans' radars, with a thriving modding community to this day. Dedicated fans are still actively maintaining their updated source ports to keep the games running, looking, and sounding better than ever on modern machines. Fans are even still creating custom levels, custom campaigns, such as the still running project known as Freedoom, and there are even what amount to custom fan games that run using the Doom engine. Even the devs themselves celebrated the game's 25th anniversary by re-releasing the original game, and others, on modern consoles, and even released a new unofficially official level pack for the original game. It's likely that the game and the series' popularity only ever declined because of the rise of countless first-person shooters that were inspired by Doom in one way or another. But with so many first-person shooters to choose from today, is the original Doom still worth playing? As you might expect from a first-person shooter made in the 90s, there is virtually no plot in the game. That's what the manual is for. Basically, you control an unnamed space marine who fans have dubbed Doomguy. Seriously? Oh wait, it's one word. Must be Doomguy. Okay, anyways, Doomguy got kicked out of the military for insubordination and was assigned to guard duty at a nuclear waste disposal facility on one of Mars's moons, where he was perpetually bored. Of course, the government conducted top-secret teleportation research, which, of course, got out of hand, and demons attacked. Being the lowest-ranking person there, Doomguy was tasked with guarding the rear as his colleagues charged in. Eventually, the yelling and shooting stopped, but the growling of monsters didn't. So, Doomguy heads in, armed only with a pistol and a few bullets, trying to escape Mars's moon alive. And because they're chaotic evil, the monsters will be trying their damnedest to kill Doomguy at every turn, often literally. The plot continues after you complete each episode, but it's only presented in the form of text and maybe a creepy background image, and each message is typically no more than a long-winded, "It got worse." So that's the plot. But we're not here for the plot, are we? Despite its bare-bones plot, Doom consistently maintains a creepy and tense atmosphere. The enemies range from typical zombified soldiers to grotesque monsters who have a habit of exploding into a bloody mess when you destroy them. Even as you explore the levels, you'll find the bloodied bodies of your fallen comrades and severed limbs hanging around. It's difficult to say whether the demons left them as warnings or if it's just their interior decorating style. You'll also find more and more occult symbols, pools of blood, and walls that seem to be made out of lost souls. Freaky. Doom alternates between intense action that can scare players by tapping into evolutionary fears, being chased, being eaten alive, being overwhelmed, and foreboding terror, through the designer's crafting of desolate areas where you're always worried that an enemy will suddenly reveal itself from behind a corner. You can also hear many of the monsters' sounds before you can see them, which adds to the creepy atmosphere. Of course, some monsters are better at hiding than others. Now, I don't really play horror games, nor do I avoid them, but I've definitely jumped a few times when I got startled by enemies, especially early on in the game. As you progress, you tend to learn the developers' tricks, where enemies will be hiding, what actions will make swarms of enemies appear, but especially if you play on a higher difficulty setting, you can still end up finding yourself in chains of jump scares as you start running backwards from an enemy and bump into a new enemy who had snuck up on you from behind. Everything else I want to say about the presentation has to do with the graphics and sound, so do those hold up today? Well, yes and no. Doom utilizes the popular at the time 2D sprites in a 3D environment style. While groundbreaking back then, it doesn't hold up to modern games. Players might find the environments to be a little blocky and might have their immersion broken when they notice that enemies, trees, or other objects are completely flat, or seem to always face them. With that said, I don't mind it. For example, having items always facing forward means that it's always easy to find and identify them. Monsters consistently either charge you or are busy doing something else, with no room for ambiguity. The simplicity of the enemies' sprites allows for them to appear in hordes and leave permanent corpses and blood splatters all over the ground without getting in your way or taxing any PC from this millennium. Occasionally, I'd have my suspension of disbelief blown when corpses would be suspended in mid-air because just enough of it was on a ledge, but that's a minor gripe. For me, it's a question of, do the graphics still look fine today? Are they free from ugliness? Do they hamper the gameplay? And I think they're fine, at least. They're not ugly, at least artistically speaking, and I never found them to hamper gameplay. It's clear what everything is, nothing ends up blending into the background, and at no point does anything visually clash with anything else. I occasionally had trouble with enemies attacking me from below that I couldn't hit, but that was mostly very late into the game. There are also a few very dark areas that make it hard to see, but those are on purpose. Typically, players can find some light-enhancing goggles that make it easier to see, but either way, any diminished vision is done very sparsely and purposefully. Now, if you boot up the game in DOSBox, you'll get the original 90s aesthetic. And feel free to bump up all the visual effects to max. I'm sure your PC can handle it. But today, you also have access to various mods that can buff up the visuals. There are graphics mods, widescreen mods, mods with various minor tweaks for things like blood color or visual randomization. Beautiful Doom, for example, gets the game up to a sort of modern retro indie standard in my opinion, and heck, there are even completely new and free level packs with custom art that people have made with the Doom engine that are still getting support today. But I'll cover mods in more detail a little later. By default, Doom uses MIDI music. MIDIs are great. Back when devs actually had to make efficient use of storage space, they couldn't fit CD quality music in their games. MIDIs were basically sheet music that your computer could read, and would perform on the spot by playing its own instruments. The downside was a lack of consistency. Every computer or sound card would essentially have a different set of instruments, known as its sound font. So while the game would be playing an overdriven guitar for a particular track on every computer, it could sound completely different with a different sound font. Let's listen to a couple. So, I like MIDI music, and it has a retro charm, but a lot of gamers today won't appreciate it. If you played PC games in the 90s, or you got into RPG Maker in the 2000s, then you'll probably have some MIDI nostalgia. Or if you were really into ringtones. Anybody remember ringtones? Now, despite the MIDI music, the tracks are composed well. It's evident if you listen to covers like the ones here on YouTube. All tracks sound metal-inspired in one way or another, whether it's thrashy Megadeth or Metallica style, or a more ambient or melodic doom metal style. Get it? Doom metal? By default, you'll probably be hearing the tracks played through your computer's own MIDI sound font. Unless you've changed things around or you're on a Mac, you'll probably be listening to the Microsoft GS Wavetable synth. This one sounds fine, but if you want to hear how it originally sounded to the original composer, the tracks were initially composed on a Roland SC55 synthesizer. This is where mods come in. Most mods will let you replace the music with different audio files. You can probably find tons of remix packs containing covers that use real instruments, but for that little extra bit of legitimacy, you can head on over to sc55.duke4.net to download the game's soundtrack played through the original Roland synthesizer. Of course, this will take up significantly more storage space, but most of us have that privilege today. So if you want high quality MIDI, you have that option. Covers or remixes? Have that option. You can even find some free sound fonts if you know how to tinker with those. As for the sound effects, I think they're great. The gun sounds do their part, and maybe they don't sound as realistic as modern games, but they're not immersion breaking for me. The demon's injury and death sounds can be a little silly, but they might be easily replaceable too if they bother you too much. But what really adds to the overall presentation is all the growls you can hear as you're walking through the levels, which adds to that creepy atmosphere. And then there are some of the battle cries that definitely make you want to run. So overall, Doom has a consistently creepy presentation with a 90s action aesthetic with plenty of completely free upgrades that can get the game to look and feel more modern if you'd like. But how's the gameplay? Doom revolutionized the FPS genre back in the 90s, which means it inevitably lacks a lot of the features that players would expect to see in modern games. First of all, the default controls are very dated. Adjust them before playing. They were designed to be familiar to players of other games of the time. The arrow keys move you around, control shoots, and the arrow keys turn you left and right. They don't make you strafe by default. WASD wasn't a thing back then, and even using the mouse to control any aspect of your character was a bit of a foreign concept at the time. Now of course you can strafe in Doom, and of course you can rebind the controls, it's just an interesting quirk these days. Now that we've got that out of the way, another quirk you'll soon discover is that there's no looking up or down, meaning no aiming up or down. Thankfully, the game takes care of that for you. As long as you've got the enemy lined up horizontally, your shots will automatically aim upwards or downwards. That means no headshots or anything, but it does make for a simpler gameplay experience. Some will hate this, but I enjoyed it, especially since one of my favorite strategies is to just charge in and start spraying bullets everywhere. The game is balanced around this of course, and it's still important to line up your shots horizontally, even with the shotgun. Maybe one positive quirk is that there's no reloading. I know it's not realistic, but hey, it's fun to just be able to point and shoot as much as you want. You want to blast 400 pistol rounds into the boss? Just hold your shoot button and blast away. It gets especially fun when you have a surplus of ammo for your minigun. The carnage doesn't stop until you say it does. Finally, there's no jumping in the game, which some people will miss, but when your character runs, he definitely moves fast enough, and the levels are designed around the inability to jump. You can mod in jumping and vertical aiming, but I'll get to that later. Now that we've gotten some of the historical quirks out of the way, I'd like to touch on two main aspects of the gameplay: the base game itself, then I'll take a look at the multiplayer and mods together. As I'm sure you've guessed, the point of Doom is to shoot things and get to the end of the level. Scattered throughout are health, armor, and ammo pickups of various sizes. The smallest ones only heal you by a single percent, but they can bring your stats above 100%, so there's some strategy to when you collect them. The levels themselves tend to be labyrinths of varying complexity and size, and there are hidden secrets scattered throughout the levels. Skilled players will find these secret areas to uncover massive ammo caches, powerful weapons earlier than the game hands them to you, or power-ups like invincibility, invisibility, or massive health boosts. And the game has a handy auto-map, so you never have to worry about getting too lost. As for the campaign mode, Doom is divided into episodes, which each contain 8 main levels, known as missions, and 1 secret level, for a total of 9 maps per episode. The shareware release came with only 1 episode. 9 levels for free isn't bad at all. If you purchased the full game, you got 2 more episodes, but the Ultimate Doom has an extra 4th episode. And about a year and a half ago, the original devs released a 5th episode, advertised as being even harder, but I haven't played it yet. The game has 5 difficulty levels, with the biggest difference between them being the number and strength of the enemies that appear. The lowest and the highest difficulties also have you receiving halved or double damage respectively, as well as double ammo in both cases. The hardest difficulty, Nightmare, gives you double ammo because the enemies respawn, which in this game is brutal. Even FPS pros might want to avoid that difficulty unless they've played Doom before. I played on the next one down, Ultraviolence, and found the game to be fairly difficult, but I'm kind of an FPS noob. The first 2 episodes have a very smooth and gradual difficulty curve. The third episode was harder, but shorter. The fourth episode in the Ultimate Doom didn't really have much of a difficulty curve though. The first two missions were short and extremely difficult, even feeling unfair. The rest of the missions felt like fan-made levels with the difficulty kind of all over the place. Some were easy, but most had a more moderate difficulty. I haven't played around with the lower difficulties, or Nightmare. Ugh. But Doom is definitely a scary game. There are jump scares, enemy noises creating a creepy atmosphere, enemies hiding behind corners, enemies appearing after you get an item, sometimes even right in the exit room. Maybe some of those are exclusive to the higher difficulties, so if you think the game isn't scary and you want it to be, turn up the difficulty a notch or two. Now I mentioned secrets earlier. There are switches, keys, secret doors found by pushing walls, and teleporters. These tend to be straightforward and easy to use, but it isn't always clear what switches do. This is often done on purpose, where a switch will open up a secret somewhere else in the level. Things that are for progression are usually easy to follow, and most things that are less obvious are designed to reward players who explore and backtrack a bit. Typically, you probably won't ever find yourself getting stuck trying to get to the end of a level, but there are plenty of secrets that I couldn't figure out and ended up giving up on. As for the enemies, they range from mutated soldiers armed with guns that they fail to defend themselves with, great for replenishing your ammo, to demons of various shapes and sizes. The armed enemies have hit scan attacks, meaning you can't really dodge their shots, and a shotgun blast from one of these guys at point blank range can hurt. The demons themselves tend to prefer lobbing projectiles which can be dodged, but tend to be more punishing than the hit scan attackers. Most demons also have a heavily damaging melee attack, but tend to have trouble fighting back when you shove a chainsaw into them. The enemy AI is decent, with enemies being alerted to your presence by sound, sometimes from rooms away if the sound could travel through a window or a hallway. The pathfinding occasionally sucks though. Probably the most interesting aspect of the AI is that they can end up attacking each other, popularly known as monster infighting. Monsters are only loyal to their own species, so if you can get any of the projectile monsters to hit another enemy type, the victim will turn around and start fighting his accidental aggressor, which makes the accidental aggressor angry, so he ignores you to fight the enemy he accidentally attacked. While it might seem like an unlikely novelty, it can actually be an efficient strategy for saving ammo or getting through encounters with a variety of tough monsters. It's a lot easier to pick off the survivors than it is to have everything chasing you at once. Overall, Doom feels fairly dated, but not in a bad way. Aside from the controls, which can be rebound, the levels being designed around the mechanics of the game mean you tend not to miss things like jumping, vertical aiming, or reloading after playing the game for a while. Doom's simple gameplay means that it's very easy to pick up and play, and it has just enough complexity to be engaging without being overwhelming. I'll admit that I haven't really put much time into multiplayer. I know that each level can be played as a multiplayer map, and there are tons of fan maps as well. You can play death matches or capture the flag with up to 4 players, but mods can increase this number. Extra weapons and ammo were added to the maps in multiplayer mode. Now this was a ton of fun for people in the 90s. People had LAN parties to play Doom, but there are so many other games nowadays to get your FPS deathmatch fix. One of Doom's strongest points for me was its focus on its single-player campaign. Some games nowadays feel like the focus is on the multiplayer modes and the solo campaign feels tacked on. Doom was likely the other way around, so unless you're looking for some Doom-specific nostalgia, you'd likely want to look elsewhere for your multiplayer mode. With that said, the game does support playing the main campaign with a friend, complete with all the monsters and sometimes extra monsters, but you'll probably need to be savvy with setting up online play for 90s era PC games. The games were made in a different time and are more involved than the essentially plug and play that today's gamers would expect, even with the source ports that I've used, but there's probably some mod that fixes all of that. Speaking of mods, funny story. When I started looking up Doom and the source ports, I thought it was made shareware, like the Urquan Masters. So I played through about 5 levels of increasing difficulty. I decided to look up how many levels I had left, but the names of the levels didn't match up anywhere I looked. Turns out, Freedoom is an entirely fan-created campaign mode, and that's how I learned you can have a legitimate Doom experience for free. But I wanted to play the real thing. Now, I sought out to get a kind of refined vanilla Doom experience, but there are countless mods out there. Not only are there mods that have been around since the 90s, but there are plenty of new mods that still have fans working on them and releasing them today. I am far from an expert in the modding community, but even just searching YouTube for Doom mods can send you down a pretty deep rabbit hole. There are a few different kinds of mods, mostly found in WADs, which are the file format for Doom stuff. Within, you can find custom levels, including custom graphics, as well as other changes. These range from minor graphical updates to complete custom levels, or even custom campaigns to complete graphical conversions, whether serious or not.
Oh my god, it feels kitty!
There are also a variety of source ports, which are ways to get more modern Doom experiences. My favorite was Crispy Doom, which promised a vanilla-feeling Doom with just enough quality of life features. Another popular one is GZ Doom, or is it GZ Doom? Which has a lot more quality of life features built in, with support for some pretty comprehensive graphical mods if you want Doom to feel somewhat modern. There are even some mods that are essentially entirely new games, playable for free, that just happen to be made with the Doom engine. I haven't delved into these because they're not strictly Doom, but my curiosity was definitely piqued while researching these. In my experience, Doom mods are easy to set up, most of which are basically just plug and play. Aside from the controls, I found Crispy Doom ready to go almost out of the box. Just put your official Doom WAD file in the folder and start up the game. And maybe get those Roland SC55 sound files. Here are the settings I used in Crispy Doom. And for comparison's sake, here's GZ Doom. This one has a lot more options, but I'm not a big fan of the default look. The graphical effects look a little smudgy to me, and the heads-up display is small, but some people will prefer this look. And the mod is very customizable. For a first-time player, I found it to be a little overwhelming, and I didn't want to play something that was too far removed from the original. You could set it up to be like the original but better, but it was just too much tinkering for me to figure out. But if you just want to give Doom a try, you can seek out the shareware episode or just try out Freedoom, which is a full campaign for free. That's what I did. By accident. Though it definitely feels more difficult than the base game. To wrap up my thoughts on mods, I think it's incredible that there are so many mods out there. Whether you want to touch up your vanilla Doom experience, or play the original Doom levels with essentially remastered graphics and gameplay, or play fan-created levels for free, or play what amount to completely distinct and more complex games in the Doom engine, or even just blast South Park characters with Doom guns, you can find a mod to fit your needs. But let's get back to talking about Doom itself. Regarding the original Doom campaign and levels, even the original version of the game is very pick up and play. With a save system that functions essentially like save states, you never have to worry about having to put down the game. Now, like save states, the game doesn't really stop you from saving anywhere stupid, like when you're about to die. Now, dying sucks because it restarts the level for you, armed only with your pistol. While not so bad early on, it can feel pretty punishing in later stages that seem to be partially balanced on the expectation that you found extra supplies in earlier stages. This is especially true of higher difficulty levels and the later episodes. But the save states make it basically a non-issue. If you think it makes the game too easy, then just only save at the start of every level. Some people even prefer to play the game by starting from scratch at the beginning of each mission for that added difficulty. One catch with the saves though is that it's easy to accidentally reload your save. Doom confirms saving over an old file, but not loading one. You might want to rebind the quick save and quick load keys to make them further apart if you're worried about hitting the wrong one. It's also a good idea to keep multiple saves. The game has 8 slots, but of course it's easy enough to copy the files to a separate location on your computer if you want more slots. This was probably to save space on older computers. The save games can take upwards of 100 kilobytes each. Additionally, there are cheats that you can use to get through levels easily, or even just skip them outright. So if you do end up losing a save or something, it's not the end of the world. I believe these are disabled on the highest difficulty, but then again, I'm sure you could find a way to cheat past that too, you filthy cheater. So Doom is pretty much fully respectful of your time. But is that time worth investing in the game? In addition to the free Doom levels that I accidentally played, I enjoyed playing through all 4 episodes that came with the Ultimate Doom. Well, I enjoyed the first 3 episodes. Episode 4 felt like a relatively lackluster fan mod with its lack of a smooth difficulty curve, but hey, others might disagree and I'm sure people were just happy to get more official levels when it first came out. As I mentioned before, I don't think I ever got stuck in a level for more than a minute or 2, but I did get stuck on figuring out some of the secrets. But since they're completely optional, it's entirely up to the player whether or not they want to keep hunting. If you get bored trying to figure out a secret, just head for the exit and move on. Almost nothing the game has to offer is ever locked behind secrets for the entire game. So even if you're more of a straight up head to the end and just keep blasting kind of gamer, you'll still get to experience everything the game has to offer. As for how long the game is, I'd estimate that the first 2 episodes probably took me about 3 to 4 hours each, with the third and fourth ones being between 2 to 3 hours each. And that's playing on the higher difficulty, meaning more monsters and more restarts. So about 10 to 14 hours, which is short, but not bad considering the price of the game. How Long to Beat says that I might be a slow-mo though, with completionists saying they got around 11 hours out of the game, and only about 6 hours for the main story, whatever that means. There's also a big speedrunning community who can beat most levels in well under a minute, but I imagine that takes hours of practice anyways. If you want more Doom, there's always the Nightmare difficulty, which is definitely made for return players. It just seems way too hard for a first-time player. Prove me wrong though. And if you're still not satisfied, there are countless other fan-made maps and campaigns which can add hours to your playtime. And there's still the unofficially official 5th episode that was released relatively recently. Overall, Doom is a fairly enjoyable experience and there's minimal wasted time. Built-in save states make it the perfect game to pick up and put down, and its low cost means that if it isn't your favorite game, you probably won't regret any of the time you spent giving it a try. If you want to play the original Doom, the best way to do it is to pick up the Ultimate Doom, which is available from GOG or Steam for about $5 to $8. It goes on sale often enough, probably down to about 75% off or so. But strangely, it wasn't on sale for Halloween this year when I checked. Boo! Now, I mentioned earlier that Doom was the original meme game before Skyrim started appearing on every console ever, but I'll write off most of Doom's console ports right now by saying that there hadn't really been a truly good console port of Doom until maybe the original Xbox. Some of them are missing features, some of them are missing levels, and some of them might be decent or impressive on those consoles at the time, but most of them weren't even as good as the PC original, which anybody's computer today can run. And they're probably more expensive these days than just buying the game digitally. Now, there have been decent ports in recent times. Doom Classic Complete was available on the PSN for PS3 and on Steam, and included the original Doom plus Doom 2 and some expansions for about $15. But it seems like it was replaced on the PlayStation Store in favor of the 25th anniversary releases. These were released for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and even the Nintendo Switch and mobile devices. It goes for about $5 to $7, but these aren't the best versions to play. Reviewers mention problems with the frame rate, scaling, and even the music and sound. They apparently used the default Windows MIDI sound font and messed that up somehow, instead of using the Roland SC55 sound font that the soundtrack was designed around. Lame. So even today, the best way to play the game is undoubtedly on the PC, mostly because you get WASD controls and it's very easy to mod the game into its best form possible. And you can even play fan-made Doom level packs entirely for free if you don't care about the original campaign. Now, if you want to get a physical copy for your collection, it looks like you can pretty easily get the Doom Ultimate for about $10 to $15 plus shipping, but it also looks like you can find a Doom 1 and Doom 2 bundle, or Doom Collector's Edition, which has those plus Final Doom for about the same price. Not bad if you insist on a physical copy. Finding the big box or original floppies is another story, where you'll definitely be paying the collector's markup. But if you're looking for that, you probably already have it, or you're not watching this video. If that's you, well, hello there. Thanks for watching my review of a game you already love. Anyways, if you're not looking for those particular original Doom levels, Doom is available to you for no cost. But if you want to get the classic game the way the devs intended, while also supporting them financially, you can do so for under $8, even if you don't bother waiting for a sale. So, is it worth it? For being one of the granddaddies of the FPS genre, for surviving through a controversy that targeted it more than 6 years after its release, and for having a currently active fan community today, Doom definitely deserves a 2 out of 2 for its history and legacy. For its consistent presentation, but for having music, sound, and graphics that, even modded, don't exactly stand up to today's games, I give it a 1.5 out of 2 for its overall presentation, but hey, this is definitely going to be subjective. For its very straightforward pick-up-and-play, action-oriented gameplay, its mostly smooth difficulty curve, its co-op campaign option, and the incredible mod community, but for having some dated quirks that the game was balanced around, meaning modding them away doesn't necessarily fix the quirks, I give it a harsh 1.5 out of 2 for its gameplay. for being completely respectful of your time with essentially built-in save states, and for being incredibly easy to pick up and put down whenever you want, as well as for being well balanced for both thorough or quick play, and for having tons of free fan mods that are quick to set up if you want more content, a 2 out of 2 for its worth your time factor. For being available on its best platform, easily moddable, for less than $8 before its frequent sales, as well as having free options to play fan levels, it's an easy 2 out of 2 for its worth your money factor. That's a total score of 9 out of 10 for the Ultimate Doom. It's not often that I'll be giving a game a score this high, but Doom's legacy is undeniable, nor is its price point. Now, I know big FPS fans will probably come at me in the comments with better games in the genre, especially because Doom's likely lacking big time in the multiplayer department, even with mods. But hey, please do recommend some games for me. Some gamers will also find the gameplay, graphics, and audio quirks frustrating. Despite the quirks, I believe that Doom is still fun today. And isn't that what a game being worth it is all about? If you're on the fence, download Freedoom and GZ Doom for free, start up any episode on the second highest difficulty, then type in IDKFA and just start blasting. Anyways, that's all I've got. This video was actually inspired by a recommendation from a viewer comment on one of our videos, so I want to say thank you to Iron Salamander 8. I had more fun than I thought I would with Doom. So everyone, please leave me your comments, feedback, criticisms, anything that's on your mind. I love to chat with you guys. And if you want to stick around, it would be so cool if you subscribed, and leaving a like tells YouTube to put more eyes on this channel, which helps us a lot. While you do that, I hope you enjoyed this clip of Safia playing Doom for the first time. Anyways, I hope to see you guys next time, and until then, have an awesome day and an awesome week.
Okay. Wait, how do I move? Oh, I just shot something. Okay, okay, wait, did that? Okay. I'm so confused. What is happening? These controls are so confusing. Wait, like, okay, like, where are, like, the zombies and stuff? Like, aren't, like, zombies supposed to... Oh, wait, there's something on the floor. Oh my god. Oh, I think okay, whatever. This game is not cute enough for me.